Some of the best games of all times came out on a Nintendo console, but what happens when you put them up against a semi-modern counterpart? I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I put Nintendo versus the Xbox 360.
Second Opinion Games.
First up, this is the classic arcade game Contra, and of course it takes place in a very small window in the center of the screen, because, you know, arcades back at this time were very popular with the horizontal shooters, and for some reason they used one of those screens in order to play this game, which was a side-scrolling from left to right affair. They probably should have turned the whole screen and then programmed it around that. Sadly, they didn't, and we got some type of weird thing where we don't see where bullets are coming. It does give us a chance to have massive bosses, and the graphics were darn good looking for its time. The music was thumping, but that was nothing compared to what the Nintendo would do. Or maybe even a little more specifically, the Famicom, because the Famicom had the absolute best version of the game. From the first time you see the title, you know that you're in for a slightly different adventure. The music is thumping, and even thumping harder than the arcade and harder than the NES because it uses a little bit more audio chip sound. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. There's a little bit more motion going on in the trees, and everything plays exactly how you remember it on the NES, only it just looks a little bit better and sounds a little bit better and has a little tiny cutscenes sprinkled throughout. This does ruin the pacing of the game, but it is unbelievably cool to see these. I really love Contra, and the Nintendo clearly has the edge on this. Some people say Super C is even better than the original, and on the NES, everything that made Contra a great game just keeps on moving forward. Now, the enemy types here get a little bit weird. However, there is more variety in the way you play the game, and instead of those corridor scenes, you have an overhead view, which are quite a bit of fun once you get used to them. I wish they had like a jump though in here. Instead, you just do nothing. So there's a little bit of a problem there, but it's a very small nitpick in what otherwise is a near perfect experience. On the Xbox 360, this time they added some slight graphical upgrades to the original game, and it's very distracting because I end up getting killed because of these graphical upgrades, not knowing with the explosions that are coming out of the people I'm blowing up are going to actually kill me. I know it's weird to think that, but because fire is generally deadly and you're walking through it, and sometimes it obscures the bullets that are coming after you, well, this becomes very annoying very quick. Sure, you could turn off those graphical upgrades, but then why bother playing on the Xbox 360? You know what? Just go back to Nintendo because it's much better there. As if that wasn't a no-brainer. Then we have Bionic Commando on the NES, and because I was such a huge Contra fan, I could not wrap my brain around this game. There was no jump button at all. So when I tried to play, well, I did just terrible. I couldn't understand the game, and yes, I know that's me. I just completely shuffled this one away and never wanted to play it ever again. I did pick it up for the Xbox 360, where the graphics are beautiful, and oh my god, now I can finally get the hang of this, because you can put it on an easy mode, where it offers a couple of extra blocks that wouldn't normally be there, and it kind of keeps you from swinging all over the place. Also, your swinging grappling arm actually feels a little bit better here in this version, and also the overhead levels of the game look and feel amazing. I really get into this game, and because there's so much more going on and the bosses are freaking awesome, I could not recommend it enough. However, it's not my favorite Bionic Commando game. For that, I'm gonna have to turn to the Game Boy Color. Bionic Commando Elite Forces. First of all, you could choose between a guy and a girl here, and of course I'm gonna pick the hot chick every time. And you can still bounce around with your bionic arm with no jump button whatsoever. Everything plays the same as previous games I've talked about, except for the fact that you can save very often and you can play it portably. Now, just because it's on the Game Boy Color doesn't mean it's gonna look like crap. Matter matter of fact, I think it's one of the better looking Game Boy Color games, and it certainly plays better. Even though you're on a much smaller play field, they actually take advantage of this without crazy leaps of faith, and they give you platforms all over the place that makes you feel like an awesome commando just taking out hordes of people, and you just feel completely overpowered by your grappling arm, and you no longer even feel the need to have a jump button. This is an incredible game for the Game Boy Color, and I forgot about it when I was doing my top 10 list on the subject, and I really wish I would go back and kind of redo it, because this is clearly one of the best games on the GBC. Russian Attack. First, I tried to play it on the Game Boy Advance, the Konami Arcade Collecting Advanced Edition, whatever the heck it's called, and it's the arcade version of Russian Attack, a game where a guy with a freaking knife runs up and starts hacking people down to size with his knife, and it just plays bad, okay? Just stay away from this game. The arcade version is kind of crap. When I jumped in and started playing it on the NES, the first thing I noticed is that there's no jump button. You have to push up to jump. This is terrible, especially because it's a action platformer. What does the other button do? Well, occasionally you can pick up like a missile launcher or something. So why didn't they take the Simon Belmont way of pushing up and the other button in order to launch the missile launcher? I don't freaking know. Maybe Castlevania wasn't a big thing at that time, which I know that it freaking was. Okay, well, this is getting frustrating, but not as frustrating as the guys that jump, kick you in the face, and you have to jump knife them out of the air in order to just clear the first freaking level of this game. I cannot stand Russian Attack. So then when I turned to the Xbox 360, I was greeted with a Metroidvania-style game that also made me feel like Solid Snake, sneaking around, ripping out people's guts, jumping in the shadows and cutting their throats and doing a whole lot of crazy other stuff. There's a block button here. You're gonna fight people with guns with your knife, and you're gonna feel like the overpowered one. There's bombs that you can throw around and tons of areas to explore, and you feel like some type of crazy gymnast as you run through this epic experience. If you don't have time to play a good Metroidvania game, well, forget about it. Your family's not important anymore because you gotta keep playing more Russian Attack, which is something that I never thought I would ever say. But this game is really that cool. This is clearly one of the best games on the Xbox 360, I gotta say. They should give this game out for free to kids to play, and then they'll be signing up to join the military in no time. Just give them a knife and a copy of this game, and that's all they really need. So Xbox wins. R-Type, a great vertical spaceship shooter, and playing it on the Super Nintendo was a lot of fun for me because, you know what, I'm not very good at these shooters, and for the NES, I was dying all the time in games that were similar, so I really like the Super Nintendo slowdown. It really helps me out, and all of the extra power-ups that you can get, and I really like this game, at least until I die in the very first level and have to go all the way back to the very start because it's a one-hit death and it gets really annoying. So I'd much rather be playing R-Type 3 on the Super Nintendo, where you don't go back nearly as far when you die, but you still go back. Also, the graphics have been improved and there's a lot of cool rotation effects, but you know what? This isn't really the same as picking up the arcade version of R-Type, but I'm okay with that. It's not a fair fight here because, you know what? The Xbox 360 had many years to improve on the formula. And improve? They did, because they remade the first R-Type game. It looks absolutely beautiful. It plays really good too. And when you die, you don't go all the way back. A matter of fact, you can set up for infinite lives, and then you just try to beat the game and every stage with using less and less lives, giving you a chance to actually practice and get better at it to the point where you can clear through the whole game in one life. My God, why couldn't the other games in the series just do that? Didn't they know that people aren't freaking masters at these shooters and they actually want to have a good time playing them? My God, just play it on the Xbox 360 every time because all the other systems just don't get it right. Soul Calibur 2 is one of the best looking GameCube games, and of course you want to play as Link. It was the main choice of buying the Nintendo version to play as him. And is he cool? Heck yeah, he's cool, he's Link. However, his voice is somewhat annoying. But you can, of course, throw bombs and throw your boomerang. You have a down stab you can hit people in the air with, and it's really OP and awesome, and the moves are terrific in every single way. And as a fighting experience, well, it's great. The Nintendo GameCube controller works great for it, but I'm not really super good at this game, so mostly I just button mash my way through it. This one character does some type of weird butt lunge that is almost like fetish territory, and insanely cool to watch again and again. This is one of the best GameCube games, even if I'm really bad at this one too. However, on the Xbox 360, you can play now online against real people, so if you're super high-end good at it, well, then you're gonna love this one. I stay offline because I'm not nearly good, and it's really gorgeous now. I mean, like, unbelievably gorgeous. So if you thought the GameCube graphics blew you away, well, then this one just takes it to whole new levels. It's kind of tight, but now we can play with Spawn here too, and that's really cool. He doesn't have an annoying voice. His character is still probably not as good as Link, but I still gotta give the win to the Xbox 360. Tecmo Bowl time, and on the Xbox 360, the first thing you notice is, well, they lost the NFL license. This means Miami now has a killer whale instead of a dolphin, and there's no Dan Marino here whatsoever. Of course, I haven't watched football in quite some time, so my football references are a little bit dated, and because I mostly learned the people's names that are playing the game via video games, well, I don't think any of these guys are real players. However, the gameplay is still really tight, and they probably didn't use real players because now they can actually add a little bit of balance to the game, because not all teams are created equally. It feels just like Super Tecmo Bowl from the Super Nintendo. This had the NFL license. It has all the players that you remember, like Don Beebe from the Buffalo Bills and Thurman Thomas and Jim Kelly, and it has Dan Marino here too, and Joe Montana and all of those greats. And my God, I really enjoy playing it for the Super Nintendo, not just because of the nostalgia reasons, because these are characters that I actually knew when I was younger and kind of grew up with, but because the gameplay just feels more solid. Sure, the graphics don't look as pretty, and if you wanted to play a game with slightly better graphics and more realistic football physics, well, play Madden or Super Tecmo Bowl 3 for the system, which I don't think is nearly as good as the first Super Tecmo Bowl game. I really like the clean aesthetics and the way the whole thing plays. I could play it for hours, I could play it every day, all day, I could play it with friends. It's easy to pick up and learn, and it is the best football game I think I ever played. The win goes to Nintendo for having the license and getting football games done right. 3-on-3 NHL hockey. On the Xbox 360, this game is kind of cool. It's sort of like an NBA Jam style hockey game. You got big-headed characters floating around on the ice, trying to overpower their ways through the game, because you can set up and customize how you want to play the game. The licensing here is kind of weird. I'm not sure that these people are even real players, because unfortunately, I also stopped watching hockey on television because I spend a lot of my time playing video games anymore. So when you're playing, you know what? It feels kind of cool, but not nearly as good as Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey on the Nintendo 64. First of all, I gotta say, sure, this time I'm not using the same names of the games here, but you know what? Look at this game. It's Defender on the Super Nintendo, but it's not called Defender, but we knew what it was trying to do. Okay, enough of that crap. Let's go back to Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey, which is one of the coolest 3D hockey experiences you could ever hope for, because, you know what? This is how hockey games should be played. Now, you don't have to play it as 3-on-3. You could actually go to a full-size hockey rink and play by official rules. I usually turn off icing, though, and offsides, because that gets kind of annoying. But when you're playing the game, you're guaranteed to have a great time. And you could even turn off the power-up pucks that catch the net on fire if you're really into that. Sometimes I play with them on, sometimes I play with them off. This is just a much better experience, even if they do have that really ugly Nintendo 64 art style. God, I can never get over that. Burger Time on the original Game Boy. This was a classic, and I could not stop playing it, especially because I had no reason to stop. I could take it anywhere with me. You play as a guy walking over giant cheeseburgers, and you're throwing your pepper at enemies. It's sort of like Pac-Man, but with cheeseburgers, and I absolutely love it. I can manage to work my way through levels incredibly fast. And then, of course, the Xbox 360 came around and made it not the same. You can now jump, and now you just jump over enemies. And the levels are huge. The cheeseburgers you make are also huge. The graphics are beautiful. And then the longer I sat down and played with it, the more I really liked it. The fact that you could actually play through the levels and you're encouraged to play through them again, trying to find faster and faster ways to get the best possible time on the leaderboards, well, you know what? This is a terrific game. But which one do I like more? Oh my god, I don't know. I keep going back and forth. Sure, they're really not the same game here. That jump button really changed the whole dynamic of how the game's played. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. Let me know in the comments down below whether the Game Boy gets to win or the Xbox 360. I'm quite frankly torn on this whole experience. Okay, maybe an easier one to make a decision on. Double Dragon, which this is a cleaned up version of the original arcade game. And cleaned up graphically, not in gameplay style. Of course, this is the Xbox 360 version of the game, and it's not good. I'm just gonna say, this is just bad. You have a whole lot of moves at your disposal. Sometimes the hit detection is not right. The gameplay is brutally unfair because your opponents will beat the freaking crap out of you. This is just not right. And now over to the NES Double Dragon. And the best version of the NES Double Dragon is the Chuck Norris edition. This is a ROM hack where you play as Chuck Norris. Trust me, it makes the entire game better because when Chuck Norris knocks someone down, they do not get back up, which means you just destroy your way through the entire game. You level up really fast, and it makes the whole thing feel a heck of a lot more fun. Now, this does not mean that you will not die because there's always going to be some blocks pushing you off an edge or some crap falling from the ceiling that's gonna get you killed. But if you manage to work your way past that, you'll beat this game in less than 20 minutes, and then you'll find out that Chuck Norris really is the best Double Dragon character of all times, and the win easily goes to Nintendo. Okay, final game time, and I'm bringing out Karateka on the Famicom. I was a huge fan of it on the Apple IIe, and if you're not familiar with this game, you have a guy that has to beat up everyone in this freaking temple, one person at a time, until you get to the final Shogun and fighting his bird right before him, and then saving a beautiful damsel in distress that's waiting on you. She runs into your arms, you give her a big hug and a kiss, and it's game over. It's a perfect game that was made for its time. And the Famicom has the very best version of this game. However, it's also beautifully difficult. So when I heard that they were making a modern remake for the Wii U, it never came out. I never saw it on the Wii U, but I did pick it up on the Xbox 360. So what was I in for? Okay, so I'm not won over by the art style. It feels a little cartoony, and the Xbox 360 could have done a lot better. But gameplay department, this is freaking awesome. It's a little bit like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out mixed with a one-on-one fighter. You have to hit the block button to time your opponents, and then you counteract with a whole bunch of beaten up fisticuffs. You have a charge meter that then you can unleash a big old attack on your opponent, knocking them down and cutting them down to size. Sure, you still have to beat up a crap ton of people in order to save your chick, and that bird is just as deadly as ever, and I really hate that bird. But when you start playing it, you're gonna absolutely fall in love with it. And when you die, you don't have to start all the way back at the beginning of the game. Instead, some other guy that she was flirting with shows up and then starts to, fight for her all over again. So it's really not a true love scenario. I don't know what's going on with this hussy, but when I die, I start all the way back to the beginning because I really like my original character that I started with. And you're gonna want to do the same because it has multiple endings to get that true love win. This might be the best version of Karateka. even if it's not the good old classic one that I was really wanting to play when I started my dad. I guess the win has to go to the Xbox 360. And I mean overall, even though I'd much rather be playing Contra on Nintendo, you know what? The modern counterparts do feel a heck of a lot better in most cases. Sports games, I think I much rather stick with the older consoles because of licensing and stuff. And shoot 'em ups, oh my god, I much rather play with a more modern art style because they might give me enough lives and change the difficulty so I could actually enjoy them. It just goes to show that no matter how much time has passed, some of the older games are still far better than anything that new games could put out, and that some of the older games were kinda crap. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching.
Take this! How's that?
Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it. These are some of my favorite games of all times, and playing them head to head like this was really an eye-opener for me. So if you want me to tackle another versus, just let me know how you want it to be done. Even if it's a ridiculous idea like Game Boy games versus the Vectrex, I don't even know. Just let me know and I'll probably work on it. Maybe I'll work on something really stupid for next time. So until later, I will see you again, guys.